Runs the Democratic House floor for 30 plus years running. He's promising this and he's stealing that. Where can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois, but you can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, how it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when you're moving out. I said, when
Top of the morning, Dan
out.
and Amy. That theme music means it's time for our weekly confab with Wirepoints.org representatives. Often Ted Dabrowski, sometimes Mark Glennon. Tom Homan detailed yesterday on Fox his predicate to targeted operations in Chicago that are receiving so much attention, targeted operations in Chicago that generated a number of arrests, removing people from Chicago, the streets of Chicago, in this country legally, who are also predators. You would think that would be welcomed. You would think.
I went to Chicago a couple times, met with black pastors, met with the community. They were begging for ICE enforcement action because of the crime in Chicago. I made a commitment to them that we'd be out there. I also made a commitment to the mayor of Chicago that I'm coming to Chicago, even though he said I wasn't welcomed, and along with Governor Pritzker. And plus, just a few days ago, Pritzker did put on social media ICE was in an elementary school. I wanted to make a point that ICE is going to do that job regardless if they're going to help us or not. As far as the local community, nothing but cheers walking to the airport, cheers walking through the streets. We stopped at a police station to take a nature break, and we went on the road so long, and every uniform in that building walked up, shook our hands, and thanked us for being there and helping them make their communities more safe.
Well, that's where Tom Homan went off the rails, according to mope alderhuman Brian Hopkins, daily toady, installed there and on the north side to be, basically a mope alderhuman, what you're used to, what the residents have become accustomed to. So because Tom Homan and ICE officers stopped in the local police department, they're doing it wrong. So says Hopkins.
One alderman said agents showed up at 4 different police stations around the city on Sunday.
They just simply walked in, as members of the public would, and walked up to the counter, identified themselves as federal agents, and said they were on an arrest mission. That's not the way to do that.
Why? What's the way to do it? They're not asking local law enforcement to work with them because they know, per people like alderhuman Brian Hopkins, most of the city council, and of course the mayor and the governor over the top and the Cook County Board president over the top, that there's not going to be any cooperation. But federal officers introducing themselves to local police, what's the problem?
How can he say that knowing the Chicago Inn is in his ward and he knows darn well what's going on outside of that hotel?
He's a pandering jamoke. That's how he could say it. And just to remind Brian Hopkins and the rest of these pandering mopes in public office, this is who Tom Homan and team removed from Chicago this weekend.
Yesterday, during the operation I was part of, I can tell you we arrested more than 9 TDA members, Tendo Agua members. A couple of them are being criminally prosecuted because one of them was selling weapons. Here's an illegal alien gang member in the United States selling guns, illegal guns, to other gang members. And some of these guns had what they call switch. The switch is added to the gun to make it fully automatic. It turns a Glock handgun into a machine gun. So we arrested a lot of TDA members. I know we arrested 2 illegal aliens that had murder convictions that were walking the street. We arrested at least 7 sexual predators, mostly child predators. We arrested people with assault allegations, extreme sexual assault. These are all bad people, public safety threats. They shouldn't be walking the streets of Chicago. If they weren't a sanctuary city, we should have arrested them in the safety and security of a jail rather than releasing them in the community and put the community at greater risk of crime and assaults.
So sexual predators and gangbangers with murder convictions, they're doing it wrong. Really?
They had Dr. Phil, which lends a circus atmosphere to this entire thing. It's just not the right approach to a very serious matter, and that is apprehending dangerous criminals who are not U.S. citizens.
What?
They're on Sirius. Tom Homan and his team is on Sirius.
Because
says
Dr. Phil with him?
Daily, Toady, Mope, Jamoke, Mook, Brian Hopkins.
Well, then what would be the right way? What was it,
The whole point is that's not about the right way. The point is you're embarrassing us. Oh, it's a circus atmosphere when Tom Homan comes to town and brings a celebrity to document it because that raises the profile on what they're doing and maybe gets the attention of some people who are otherwise dead from the neck up, which is, a significant percentage of the population in Chicago.
Who watch daytime TV.
The circus atmosphere. The circus atmosphere is not the endemic violent crime. The circus atmosphere is not the stand-down orders for law enforcement in the city of Chicago. The circus atmosphere isn't the non-prosecution and decarceration culture in Chicago. Dr. Phil coming along with Tom Homan while they're doing the work that is opposed by the political power structure in Chicago, that's the circus. Okay. And then for good measure, and by the way, this is Craig Wall's report from ABC7, who's doing a nice job impersonating state mouthpieces for the political power structure from a bygone era. I mean, where is anybody to offer the countervailing point in Craig Wall's report? There isn't one. And I know there's, no opposition party, but I'm sure you could come upon some people that are appreciative of Tom Homan and his people being there doing what the local politicians won't do. I'm sure you could find all those people that Tom Homan mentioned applauding. I'm sure if you talk to Tom Homan, he'd provide somebody, maybe a family member who has lost someone, or like the Abraham family that we talked about yesterday because of the open borders, sanctuary policies of this administration, political power structure in the state. Maybe you could find somebody. Instead, to pile on to dope, mope, jamoke, nitwit, Brian Hopkins is Graciela Guzman, given the whole everybody's afraid. They're afraid because they're here illegally. Well, they should be.
They are scared to go to work, scared to go to school, scared to leave the home, to be able to go to things like clinic visits, go to their food pantry, go to the store, right? They're second guessing all of these decisions.
Everyone's walking around Chicago looking over their shoulders. I mean, please, this is nonstop, Dan. They're shoving this down our throats. In Elgin, 2 kids have been staying home since Trump, took office for fear their parents are going to get deported.
They're scared to go out and get their taxpayer-funded benefits. Boy, what a sad story. For more on this, please be joined by Mark Glennon, Wirepoints.org, a founder and executive editor. Mark, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
And thanks for having me.
So, we're seeing some of the same attitude. It's a little bit more muted in the suburbs, but you're seeing it, as we talked about earlier in the program, and have on a number of occasions. School superintendents offering these directives to staff about essentially running interference if ICE would just show up to the school, or if ICE picks up a parent of a student at the school, who, the entirety of the family being here illegally and so forth. That's where things are at.
Yeah, this is just utterly infuriating, stupefying, and thank you for going through that list of the bad guys that Holman ticked off. The regular press hasn't talked about that list. Go through it and see their stories about this. They don't publicize that. You got to go to alternative sources or here to hear that list of the kinds of people that Holman has been arresting. And I would emphasize one too. It's not in Chicago. Those 2 young ladies that died in Urbana.
Right.
The segment you just ran on Jeannie Ive saying the sanctuary crowd has blood on their hands because of those deaths. That is absolutely right. They got blood on their hands. And, there's a little comparison here that's kind of interesting. You might remember 20 years ago, George Ryan's career basically ended because he was alleged to have improperly licensed people while he had been Secretary of State. One of the people improperly licensed got into a fiery crash, killed some people. That ended his career. Well, now we got this guy here who is an illegal alien, not supposed to be here, driving drunk, crashes into the rear end of those, kills two young students at the University of Illinois. They have blood on their hands, the people who are protecting these folks, and it's beyond words.
And let me tell you something too. They're afraid. Brian Hopkins, that Jamoke is afraid. The Jelly Belly is afraid. BLM Brandon, they're afraid. All these, they think they're pretending like they're presenting this unified front, and we're standing up to Trump, and they think they're going to get away with just standing up to Trump. But as these reports come in with the people that are being removed from the streets of Chicago, and they're standing in the way, and all they have is this rap they've been running for decades, and the attention of the larger public wasn't on this like it is now. They're not going to get away with this as long as Tom Homan and his people continue to do the work they did this weekend.
I hope they don't get away with it politically. You're better able to say than I am, but they think the public is still behind this radical leftist stuff on immigration. God, I hope not in Illinois. The rest of the country isn't, and let's hope that the pendulum is really swinging hard against them. But they apparently don't see it that way.
But don't you think like this of any story would wake people up? I mean, a reporter has got to say to Governor Pritzker, "Do you want to apologize to Katie Abrams' family for what you did, for what you allowed? Your policies allowed this. This could have been a preventable crime." And I mean, the guy, after hitting them, he gets off and takes off and starts running and is found in Texas.
Yeah, if the story is getting out to them, is it? That's the hard part, because again, our press, the regular press, a lot of people all the time, they turn on, the evening news for a few minutes. Maybe they glance at the Tribune. They're not going to see a lot of these stories.
Right.
It's just outrageous.
Talking about Illinois' finances a bit. I mean, and by the way, continuing to the need, and the good thing Wirepoints exists, to document the resources being diverted to people in this country illegally because of our sanctuary policies. I mean, I know when we've talked to Ted about this, just on the Medicaid coverage alone, with the number of people in Illinois who are in this country illegally, you're talking in the hundreds of millions, if not billions, annually. And so that continues to be documented as Jelly Belly runs around and talks about Illinois being this dynamic state that's growing and balanced budgets and all this. And so that's not happening. The cost of these policies is growing, and the burden on Illinois families is growing and businesses is growing too, just reminding people where we stand in terms of corporate tax rates, where we stand in terms of total tax burden when you layer in the state income tax, personal income tax, as well as property taxes. I mean, what you're paying out versus what you're getting, there's something else that needs some constant reminding. Yeah,
and Ted, I'll jump the gun a little bit on a story Ted's going to be publishing with those numbers on Medicaid especially. We now have almost a quarter of Illinois on Medicaid, $2.9 billion out of our budget, $2.9 billion out of our budget goes to Medicaid. It's absolutely exploded during COVID, but we haven't cut back the number back to pre-COVID numbers. Why? What's the excuse for that? And for the Medicaid we pay for the immigrants, there's no federal match on that, so that comes entirely out of the pockets of Illinoisans. And try to get to the bottom of this stuff. It's pretty hard because we haven't gotten the audited financials in 565 days, which, the average for the other states is only 200 days. A lot of other states are a year ahead of us. They've already done their 2024 audited financial statements. We don't have ours from 2023. So we're going into budget season here blind now without real numbers.
A 9.5% corporate rate, which is the third highest in the country. It's the highest in the Midwest by a wide margin. And then you layer in the personal income tax at 3.95. You layer in the highest property taxes in the nation. I know there's an argument that can be made between us and New Jersey, but not much of one that matters. I mean, Illinois pays, if not the highest combined state and local tax burden, then definitely top 5 in the country. And what are you getting? This is the question that we need to continue to pose so that perhaps enough people will at some point reflect upon it.
Yeah, what are you getting? I mean, you're not getting equity, by the way. You know, maybe some of this would be worthwhile if we were really pulling people up at the bottom, but we're not. Every report there is on the left and the right that measures equity in different ways shows that Illinois is at or near the bottom of other states.
Mark Glennon, founder and executive editor of Wirepoints, wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Every morning, we rise and shine, make breakfast, and brush away the night's rest. These routines help us start the day off right. Nature-Made vitamins are a simple step in that daily care regimen. Multivitamins with daily essentials, clinically studied probiotics for gut health support, magnesium to help relax the body. Nature-Made is made to keep